So our second paper assignment that we're doing is called a visual analysis. And we've been working so far with some visual images, which we talked about are totally examples of text. And so I just want to highlight a couple things here before I go into the prompt. This will be our second paper, and we're moving on from the narrative into more of a analysis kind of perspective of something outside of our own lived experience. So no matter what type of image we're looking at, all images have an argument to it, just like the written text. Websites, advertisements, paintings, movie posters. All of these are considered text because we can obviously read them and we can identify the argument and we can figure out how it's made. Even images without words create a narrative. So you can identify the narrative of an image by studying the details. You can look at those details and see what the implications or connotations of the parts of the image are, how those pieces of the image fit together. So some steps that I think are particularly helpful for approaching visual text is using the same strategies as you would analyze a written text. So you certainly start by looking at the audience, author, and text triangle. So who created the image and why? Sometimes this is very well known. Sometimes this takes a little digging. Who it was created for. You might have a very good idea of whom the audience is, a certain geographic area, a certain demographic, a certain age range. Or this might take some time for you to actually think about and ponder and make some assumptions about. And then your text, which is the image itself, which isn't going away. So sometimes your author's clear, sometimes it's not. If you're looking at an image in like an advertisement, it's clear on who the author is. It's the company that's advertising. If it's a piece of quote unquote art or community art or street art, sometimes you have to guess at who the author is. Who the author is can often tell you what that person or that group is someone trying to convince you of. And of course, we're the audience, but who the image is trying to argue to? Who do you think it appears the image is trying to appeal to, or who it might be directed at? And when we break down these visual arguments, we try to put the pieces together and how do we think about how we read them? And really, often harder than written arguments because sometimes images feel very much more immediate. You feel like you have to look at it right on first glance and know what it's saying, but really you have to kind of take the time to very much study an image, and that's what we're going to be doing. So the same categories that you use to break down a written text are the ones that you still use when you're breaking down a visual text. Purpose, tone, content, arrangement, text, all of these create a narrative and an argument. And I look at these in these order because I think they start really basic and then get more difficult as you go on. So purpose, what do you think the image is for? Advertisement, easy. Maybe if it's a mural, a website, or a piece of street art or other art form, it might not be as easy to look at first glance. Content, what is actually shown in the image? Can you identify people or objects or anything else going on? Don't break it down yet. Just think about what you can actually see. What is the arrangement? How are the objects and people arranged on the page? This often communicates the relationships between parts of an image or people. If you think about things like scaling, is something larger or more prominent? Is there blank space? Is the page filled? What's in plain view versus what might be more abstractly hidden behind? So you can think about those areas as well. And we also think about tone. What is the overall feeling of an ad, of an image, of a website, street art, regular art? What kinds of emotions or physical states does it suggest? Is it something giving off more positive or negative or neutral kind of vibes about what's being shown, or maybe you can't quite figure that out? If there is written text, what does it say? And how does that text relate to the rest of the image? Does it match or contradict it? This is where you can editorialize and think about things like font and color and placement of the text, because this can tell you sometimes as much about those areas than the words themselves. When you're thinking about defining your argument, making your thesis, putting, what is my main point for looking at this, for analyzing, images can have thousands of different arguments. It's up to you to figure out which arguments you want to make more prominent. Ads convince you to buy a product. Movie posters want to get you interested in the movie. Murals can talk about a certain area of a neighborhood, of an artist. Graffiti art, street art often comments on society and it acts like a temporary mural. So you want to distinguish between the narrative and the argument. Both are really important because in a lot of respects, you're still telling the story of this image. However, now you need to put an argument with it. Your narrative is more of a statement of what's going on in the image, and your argument builds on that story and it tells you what the author wants you to think about it. So basically, when you put this all together, the arrangement of the content shows the relationship of the objects displayed, which makes your narrative, while the tone tells you what the authors want you to think about what's being shown. And so the purpose of the image, combined with the above, really helps you define the argument. So this leads us into writing our own visual analysis essays. Now, for this assignment, you'll have plenty of time. You're going to step outside your own experience and analyze a text that you have to become familiar with. And your text in this case is visual text. It could be a mural, it could be street art, it could be a different type of image of your choice, advertisements, websites. You can totally use more than one image, but you want to explain or connect them in some way. So I would probably suggest staying with 3 or 4 at the most if you do that, though you're certainly welcome to just focus on 1 or 2 if you like. Whatever mediums you're picking here, you want to think about what the argument of your message of your chosen image or images are. You're going to use evidence from the visual, like what do you physically see, colors, facial expressions, body language, texture, etc. And you want to really argue, and your thesis becomes what you think the text, what you're observing, is saying. You could also want to perform an analysis on a larger context. What are some of these main themes? What is the importance of the visual formats? How are the messages received in this context? Are they saying something larger about what's going on in society? And I would think back to the notes I've included on ethos, pathos, and logos. And I know a lot of you have studied these concepts of persuasion before. Ethos, how do we build up credibility as authors? Pathos, are we appealing visually or textually in a written form to someone's emotions? And logos, are we creating some sort of logical appeal that someone's going to look or read into something more? So you should incorporate any research relevant to the understanding of the image or images that you find. So you can use MLA style, and we'll go through this more. You can use as much research as you like with this or none. Some research might be really helpful to help you give you a little bit more to your argument in your discussion. But no matter what, your essay will have an intro, a thesis, a close reading of the features, and your sort of conclusion that expands your topic, the so what of your essay. You can also put yourself in the perspective of sort of writing an essay as a profile of a place. Because definitely sometimes journalists will profile significant spaces in cities by kind of showing us why they're important. You can do the same thing. Well, if you're picking a mural or if you're picking a piece of street art, maybe what does your image or images play these kind of roles in the larger persona or character of the neighborhood in which they're situated. This gives you a great chance to practice with summary, analysis, reflection. You can absolutely use the I perspective in this. I would say to leave the I perspective out of your thesis to make it more neutral, but you can certainly then reveal some of your actions and some of your thoughts as you work your way through the essay. We'll be doing peer review with this. Again, 4 to 5 pages, double space. If you want to write more, go for it. But that's our kind of goal for this. And, when you're going through, I would say these are going to be our rough goals. Definitely having a rough draft done, but we can certainly look to see. I said this before, I'm big on quality over quantity. We're not writing 7 papers. We're just writing a couple papers in this 7 weeks to get you more refined. And this gives you a chance to really think about using images in a way that, you probably didn't get to use that before. So think about it. Lots of extra resources. We're going to talk about this in class as well. Now that you've got, a literacy narrative under your belt, we're going to keep working with all different types of analysis.